Good day and a special warm welcome to the Grade 12's Matric class of 2021. My name is Wilson Bope and I'm in this program to discuss about the exam tips for success, mainly focusing on Paper 2 Agricultural Sciences. Now, in order for you to pass any exam, you're supposed to know the structure of that exam paper. Now, Paper 2, it is out of 150 marks. And the duration of this paper is 2.5 hours. So you're supposed to be done in 2.5 hours and make sure that you answer all the questions that are asked in the exam. Now, the structure of this question paper, it has two sections. That is section A and section B. Section A, it has one major question, which is out of 45 marks. And section B, it has 3 questions. Of each of those questions, it is out of 35 marks to make a total of 105 marks in section B. So if you have to add 35 and 105 marks, if you have to add 45 and 105 marks, the total will be 150 marks. Now, question number 1, it is mainly composed of a variety of short answer questions, objective questions, for example, multiple choice questions, terminology, columns or statement and items, and also data response questions. Now, especially in this question, which is out of 45, I always encourage all the learners to make sure that they answer all the questions. Never ever leave a blank when you are answering this section, because it is the section that has the most marks as compared to all the other questions in section B. So make sure that you attempt and you never leave a blank in this section. Now, going to section B mainly comprises of 3 questions. Of each of those 3 questions, it has 35 marks each. Now, which are the topics that are going to be covered in paper 2? Now, in paper 2, we have 3 main sections. That is, the first section, it is on agricultural management and marketing. And then the second section, it will be on production factors. And then the third section, it will be on basic agricultural genetics. So, in summary, we're really saying that question number 2, it is on agri management and marketing. And then question number 3, it is on production factors. And then the last question in paper 2, it is on basic agricultural genetics. So, what are the details in these sections? Now, on the first section, which is agricultural management and marketing, the first topic that we are supposed to be well versed with, it is agricultural marketing. And when we're talking about this, we are supposed to become more comfortable with those graphs. For example, the demand and supply graphs, the laws of demand and the laws of supply, you're supposed to know them. And then the second section will be on market equilibrium. What is it that we mean when we talk about market equilibrium? You're supposed to know how to play around with the curves that is on the demand and the supply curves, where they intersect, what is the meaning of that point where they intersect. And we also focus on the shift in demand and also shift in supply. You're supposed to know what happens to the market, what happens to the price, what happens to the quantity demanded, or what happens to the quantity supplied to the market when we shift some of these parameters. And then the third section under agricultural management and marketing, it is on the marketing systems. You are supposed to know the different marketing systems. For example, cooperative marketing systems. What is the benefit of each and what is the cons of each? That is the disadvantage of each of those. Make sure that you go and read all these sections and become comfortable with them, because they will definitely be asked in the exam. And then the fourth section under agricultural management and marketing, it is on agricultural entrepreneurship. What is it that we are talking about when we talk about entrepreneurship? What are the characteristics or what are the qualities that make one an entrepreneur? You're supposed to know all these and make sure that you can also give examples where you're asked. And also the last section under agricultural management and marketing, it is on business plans. You may be given a scenario or you may be given a business plan, and you are supposed to make sure that you provide more detailed information. Make sure that you are in a position to draw up a business plan. What is it that is needed in a business plan? Why do farmers need business plans? What are the benefits of doing business plans? So you're supposed to go and read on these aspects so that you become well acquainted with these aspects. Now, question number 3, it will be on production factors. In agriculture, we always talk about the 4 main factors of production. That is the land, labor, capital, and management. Now, land is always important, but land alone, without the other 3 production factors, will not be of benefit to the farmer. Even though you have the land, you still need the labor, you still need the capital to make sure that you achieve whatever you need to do on your farm. You also need management. We're talking about the people that are involved in the day-to-day running of the business. You may have the land, you may have the labor, but without the capital, you won't be able to produce anything. You may have the land, the labor, the capital, but without the proper management of all these resources that are given to you, or the resources that are at your exposure, you won't be able to produce anything. Hence, all these production factors, they always work hand in hand. That is, we're talking about the land, labor, capital, and management. What is the importance of land? What is the importance of labor, capital, and management? Make sure that you go and read and you are more comfortable in discussing any of these. For example, labor. You may be asked, or you may be given a scenario where you are given, say, seasonal workers or permanent workers, or you are given part-time workers. Now, you're supposed to know the difference between these. What is the difference between a seasonal worker and a part-time worker? What is the difference between a seasonal worker and a full-time worker? Now, seasonal worker, for example, his services or her services are only required during the peak of the season when production is taking place. After the peak of the season, then their services are no longer required. Therefore, you are supposed to go and get well versed with this. Capital. What are the different forms of capital that are involved in agriculture? And management. What are the management principles that are involved? Now, the last question in paper 2, it is always on basic agricultural genetics. That is question number 4. Now, this is one of my favorites. Why? Because if you're doing life sciences, this is basically a revision of whatever you've done in life sciences. Genetic concepts are basically the same, whether it's in life sciences or agricultural sciences. So the first topic is about knowing basic genetic concepts. For example, when you're dealing with monohybrid crosses and dihybrid crosses, you're supposed to know the difference between a monohybrid cross and a dihybrid cross. As the word says, monohybrid and dihybrid. Mono means 1, di means 2. So when you're dealing with a monohybrid cross, you're basically focusing on one trait. For example, it may be height, or it may be the color, or it may be definitely just a single, maybe wrinkled seed. So we're talking about one trait. And then when you're talking about dihybrid, di means 2. You're focusing on 2 concepts. It may be height and color. So you're supposed to know how to use the Punnett square. You're also supposed to know how to use the genetic diagrams. And make sure that you practice as many questions as possible so that when you come across a question like this in the exam, you won't be stuck. And then the second topic under genetics, it is always on patterns of inheritance. Which are these patterns of inheritance? Now we are talking about incomplete dominance, we're talking about codominance, epistasis, multiple alleles, also talking about atavism, we're talking about polygenic inheritance. Make sure that you are well versed with these concepts so that if you are given a scenario in the exam, you won't be stuck. Examiners usually love to give codominance and incomplete dominance. These are some of the tips. And then we'll also go on to look at variation and mutation. What is variation? Variation, we are focusing on the differences that exist between organisms of the same species. So you look at the causes of variation. Is it an external cause of variation or is it an internal cause of variation? We also look at mutations. What are the causes of mutations in plants or animals? What are the benefits of some of these mutations? Are these beneficial mutations or these are lethal mutations. So some mutations are beneficial and some mutations can be lethal, that is of no benefit to us. So it is always important for you to know the causes of mutations and examples of mutations that have actually benefited the farmers. And the next aspect, it is always on selection and breeding. Now, selection, we're talking about choosing. Now, for you to choose, it means that you're selecting something that has better characteristics than the other one. And selection, it has to start from variation. First, there has to be variation between organisms for you to be able to select. And selection and variation are the foundations of breeding. Because for you to go on to breeding, you'll have selected based on variation. So these concepts are all linked, and make sure that you always read what are the selection methods that are employed. Mass selection, family selection, progeny selection. Make sure that you are comfortable with these selection methods. And when we are breeding, you have to rely on the selection methods that we have discussed. And then lastly, under genetics, we have to look at genetic modification. Now, scientists, they are coming up with more and more better and efficient methods on how to produce plants or animals that give us the best results. And they are always talking about genetic modification nowadays. Genetic modification is a new concept on the market, which is actually much more quicker in terms of yielding the results as compared to the traditional breeding methods. So you're supposed to know what is meant by genetic modification. How do the farmers or how do the scientists modify plants? Now, genetic modification, majority of the people, they just talk about GMOs. Well, that is genetically modified organisms. What are the benefits of these genetically modified organisms? What are the concerns? When you say concerns, what is it that is worrying most of the people, especially the consumers, about genetically modified organisms? Now, you're supposed to also know or to give examples of genetically modified organisms. For example, on the market, we have BT maize. The benefit being that when you're using BT maize, you don't need to use a lot of pesticides, which is actually a plus to our environment. So most of the people, they always argue about the disadvantages of genetically modified organisms without really understanding what GMOs are. So it is always important for you to go and read, because you may be asked, especially this question, what are the benefits and what are the disadvantages or the concerns about genetically modified organisms? So make sure that you go and study these topics and know the content which is going to be coming in your paper too. And we have a lot of resources that are available online. We have a lot of resources, especially on the WCD portal. We have a lot of lessons which are uploaded there. You can go through them. You can download this stuff for free. And also past exam papers, which are also available on the WCD portal. We also have past exam papers, which are also on the Department of Education website. We also have other revision booklets, which are also available on the WCD portal. I always encourage the learners to have access to the answer series booklets, because they offer a lot of exam type questions which can assist you in your revision. Always make sure that you get a copy of the Mind the Gap study guides, also via Africa study guide. All these resources are available to be used so that you can be able to pass your exam. There are also other various textbooks and materials that is available online from different organizations. I've seen a couple of websites that are also offering study material for free. I know it is a very difficult period for you as Matric students, but always make sure that you grab each and every resource that is available to you to your benefit. Now, we also have Tips for Success, which is produced by the Department of Education. This one provides general study tips. We also have the 2021 National Examination Guideline, which you can use. Also make sure you use glossaries and past papers to study all terminology that is covered in any specific topic. For example, in genetics, we have closely related terms like chromosome, chromatin, centriole, chromatid, homologous, homozygous, heterozygous. You're supposed to know these terms. These terms may be related, but they mean slightly different things. Always practice drawing graphs. And as I have always said, the graphs are always the easiest ones to get the most marks out of. Because in most cases, the graph is always out of 6 marks. And of those 6 marks, you can easily get a mark for the title, which is the heading, which you get from the question itself. You can also get the mark from labeling the x-axis, another mark for labeling the y-axis, and another mark for just knowing the units which are given. So those 4 marks are easy marks. You haven't even started drawing the graph yourself, but you already got 4 marks. And where are the other 2 marks going? For knowing the type of graph that we have been asked. For example, if the question says draw a line graph, make sure that you draw a line graph. If you say the bar graph, make sure that you put your bars. You should also know the differences between a bar graph and a histogram, because this is one of the major challenges that learners always encounter in the exam. You are asked to draw a bar graph and then you give a histogram. Definitely you lose some marks there. So make sure that you know the type of the graph that has been asked. Make sure that you read the question and understand what the question is asking before you answer that question. Make sure that you know basic processes. For example, we have talked about genetics. We talk about monohybrid crossing. We talked about marketing. Make sure that you know maybe the law of demand or the law of supply. Make sure that you know those concepts. Nuclear transfer. Make sure that you know those terms that are going to be coming in that specific paper. Always be able to use graphic organizers. Now, what is a graphic organizer? I've given an example of what a graphic organizer is on the screen. So make sure that you know the flow of the information or the sequence. For example, what is shown on the screen, it is showing the Ustra cycle. What is it that is involved? You may be given this and you are asked to label which one takes place first and which one comes second and how the cycle goes. So this may be given in an exam and you're supposed to be comfortable in working around graphic organizers. You're supposed to know what is involved in all these processes that we have discussed in the questions. No instructional verbs, for example, describe, where you have to state in words the main points of a structure or process, or explain, where you have to express your answer in a cause, effect, or statement and reason, or identify, where you have to name the essential characteristics, or when the question says name, you just have to give the name of something. You don't have to explain when the question says name. And when the question says tabulate, it simply means that you have to draw a table and indicate the answers as direct pairs. Or when they say state, make sure that you write down information without discussion. On my concluding remarks, I always encourage you to go and get a copy of the National Examination Guideline document. This one, it will assist you in understanding what is coming in your exam. Always know the topics, as I have discussed. Know the topics that are coming in that specific paper. It will be frustrating for you to read topics for paper 1 when you're going to write paper 2, and to read topics for paper 2 when you're going to write paper 1. Always understand the instructional verbs that we have discussed, that is, describe, state, and explain. And always make sure that you answer all the questions in the exam. Those marks, out of 150 marks, make sure that you attempt all of them. Never ever leave a blank. I always repeat this. Never ever leave a blank. Always make sure that you attempt all questions, especially section A, which we said is multiple choice questions or one-word answers. You cannot afford to leave a blank there. Make sure that you attempt, you write something there. And I know it has been a very difficult year for the Matric students, especially during these difficult times of COVID. But I always have to encourage and say that you can succeed despite all the circumstances. Do not be easily distracted by any unnecessary interferences, but focus on your studies and dreams. Believe in yourself and in all that you do. You can do it.